You're mostly known for photographing women, but recently you started photographing men, middle-aged men, late middle-aged men. Senior men. And we showed one at the IMA recently called Founding CEO. Why this move to photographing senior men?
Well, I have wanted to photograph men for a long time, but I wasn't quite sure how I would approach it. But I read quite randomly a book about Procter & Gamble, the American huge company that makes all manner of, consumer items. And they had a very nice gallery of the CEOs over the years, and that struck me for some reason. So I decided I'd create my own corporate executives in the manner of corporate photography, which I found very interesting because senior executives are photographed in a way that makes them look paternal, yet they also have to look steely, and there has to be a sense of resolve and control and trust. But again, they have to look fatherly as well. So I really liked that combination. So I decided I wouldn't photograph real business executives, I'd construct my own. So I put an ad in my local paper. It said men aged 65 to 75 required by local photographer. Please call. I really didn't know what to expect, but I had about 40 phone calls. So I met each man in a cafe and just said, this is what I'm doing. And most of them were quite keen. I wanted men who looked like Blake Carrington from Dallas, but most of them didn't.
Was there a gerontophile dimension to the work?
No. Although I did meet them, and I didn't want to appear to be some sort of sexual predator, so I took all manner of stuff with me to show them that I was a real photographer, and but they didn't really seem perturbed. They were all just like the idea of doing something different. So they came to my house and I put them in a suit and tie, and I was actually quite surprised how once they had they'd take their polar fleece sweatshirts off and they put this suit and tie and they suddenly became transformed into these very convincing looking characters. But I very much enjoyed the process. And also just because I wasn't relying on costumes and wigs and makeup, it was very simplified and it was completely different, and the shoots took only about 40 minutes because there was no sort of fluffing round. All they had to do was really comb their hair. I didn't sort of have any cosmetic overhaul applied to them, and it was very different from how I usually work with the necessary costuming.
What are you working on at the moment?
Well, I'm going back to a female portrait series, but it will be smiling and all the clothes are pink, but I'm not quite sure how it's going to, what the resulting product will be yet. But the starting point was a pink pantsuit by an American designer called Norman Morell that was made in 1969, and it's got a very large jewelled Maltese cross on the front. And it was owned by a woman called Mildred Custon, who was the director of the Bonwit Teller department store. And she was a senior woman in her late 50s, but I like the idea of putting it on a younger model. And then that's all so far. Yeah. And I should also mention I haven't manipulated by digital means her face. Her eyes are very large, and I think that adds to her childlike qualities. But it's part of a series of 5 works, girls of a similar age, 10, 11, I think 12. And they're all in similar high-necked costumes. So I think when you see them together, you do realise that they are children. And the clothing is in some ways adult, but in other ways it's, I think the fact that there aren't colours, they're very monochromatic. I think that removes a bit of the childlike aspect to the costumes.
Talk to us about your tapestry.
Oh, sure. I don't know if you've all seen it, it's around the corner. It's a tapestry I made last week. It's a work based on another image from an earlier series, but it has the same feeling as these works. And I was approached by the Queensland Art Gallery. There was a commission to have a very large tapestry made at the Victorian Tapestry Workshop in Melbourne. And that image was chosen for a number of reasons, but it's a favourite work of mine. And the woven tapestry, it's made on a loom in the traditional manner. And it took 2 weavers about 9 months to create, and they worked from the ground up. And I was hesitant at first, but I liked the idea of doing something that was beyond my realm of expertise, and the fact that it was such a meticulous project. I really like the obsessiveness of that. I can quite relate to it. The fact that the weavers were able to convey translucence of fabric, yet using a cotton fibre to do it, I found very appealing. And also the scale is far larger than something I could produce, via photography paper as well. So I liked the aspect of the scale. So I did work, I came over a couple of times to visit the weavers, but it was largely in their hands, and it's sort of considered an interpretation of my work. Obviously it's not a direct copy, because there are all manner of sort of logistical aspects to it that that had to be sort of rethought. But I find it quite a spooky object.
They deliberately come in with
Yes, good. That's very observant. Yeah, they are, and they've captured there's even a single strand of hair over the face.